Welcome to the Beyond Barriers podcast. If you're an ambitious woman who wants to dominate your career, then you are in the right place. This podcast is co-hosted by Nikki Barua, digital innovator, serial entrepreneur, author, and speaker, and Monica Marquez, ex-Googler, diversity expert, and senior corporate leader. From inspiring stories to cutting-edge strategies, you'll learn how to develop the skill set, mindset, and tool set to get future-ready fast and accelerate your success. Hi, it's Monica Marquez, your podcast host for today's episode. What do you do when you plan for the future of work, but the future shows up overnight? What if this COVID-19's pandemic was the colossal catalyst for the transformation and disruption of work, culture, and talent development in organizations that many HR execs have long advocated for, but have never been able to advance? In today's episode, Enrique Rubio shares his perspectives on hacking HR and looking at the strategies and technologies that will help you enable those changes while elevating humanity in the workplace. Enrique is an HR, tech, and future of work expert and keynote speaker and founder of Hacking HR, a global learning community at the intersection of future of work, technology, business, and organizations with thousands of members all over the world. He came to the United States from Venezuela as a Fulbright Scholar. Prior to coming to the U.S., Enrique was the CEO at Management Consultants, a firm specialized in human resources in Venezuela. Enrique has over 20 years of experience and is an electronic engineer with an executive master's in public administration from the Maxwell School. Visit www.iambeyondbarriers.com, where you will find show notes and links to all the resources referenced in this episode, including the best way to get in touch with Enrique. Welcome, Enrique. Thank you so much for being on the Beyond Barriers podcast. We are super excited to have you as our guest today and learn a little bit about the world of hacking HR and your background, which is extremely interesting. I think this is the first time ever I've met someone who is an electronic engineer, who is an expert HR executive with a master's in public administration and a Fulbright Scholar. So would love for you to share with our audience your story and your journey and kind of what was the transformation you experienced to go from engineering to HR, and how are you marrying the two together?
Absolutely. Well, Monica, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be here. You know what's funny is if you had asked this question to somebody with my background 25, 30 years ago, they probably, the workplaces back then probably wouldn't have, sort of valued that much such a background, right? Because, we valued more some people who were in the same silo for a long period of time because we equated expertise to how long have you been doing the same thing.
Right.
Today, the story is very different. The story is how many things have you done different from what we're hiring you to do? How much mess ups have you done in your career? How many times have you failed? And how many times have you tried? That's good, right? So that the workplaces today, I think they value expertise as not necessarily being in the same silo for a long period of time, but as in being more horizontal about the knowledge that you have accrued in your career and how you're making sense of all those pieces for the work that they're hiring you to do. So anyway, I just wanted to start with that because my background sounds a little bit all over the place, right? I started working as an engineer, and actually the main reason, which not everybody knows, of why I wanted to be an engineer is because I really wanted to be an astronaut. And I couldn't do it because I'm claustrophobic, so that probably wouldn't have worked. But I said, you know what? In my country, my home country, or my birth country, Venezuela, I there was nothing like to be an astronaut right after that, right like that. So I said, the closest thing to that would be to be an electronic engineer. And then I can grow from there. So anyway, I started as an electronic engineer. I worked 10 years in telecommunications. Then I switched to human resources. And the way I combine all of the work that I have done in electronic engineering with my education in public administration, with the social work that I've done, because I was also very involved in nonprofits back in Venezuela, and the work that I'm doing now with Hacking HR, all of the pieces make sense together because one piece of knowledge from one field really makes sense into the other field. For example, as an engineer, we are trained to have a mindset of, problem solving, experimentation, quick iterations, project management, which is something that normally don't have in HR.
Right.
In HR is, you are, risk averse. You're not that innovative in general, traditionally. And I'm not generalizing, but traditionally it's being, non-innovative, low risk, doing the same thing day in and day out. That's why you see so many heads of HR that are brought from the legal space, which is, not that innovative in general because, it's hard to change. So I bring all these pieces together, and for Hacking HR, it makes sense because, well, we are a community which, ties back to my working in nonprofits. We are a very agile community, which ties back to my experience in engineering, and we put people first. Our main purpose is to create a better HR, to create better workplaces, to create a better society, which all ends up, the meaning of it all is to do better for humans. And that ties back to my work in HR. So all of the work that I've done in my career somehow ties back to what I'm doing right now. And it, like Steve Jobs said one time, you only connect the dots looking backwards. It didn't make sense for me back then. I never expected myself to be in HR when I was an electronic engineer. And then, when I started my career in HR, I never expected to be the founder of a community like Hacking HR. So it only makes sense now because I am looking back and saying like, okay, all these dots are connecting, and this is the way they are connecting.
That's beautiful. You truly are living the kind of mission or the embodiment or just the word hacking HR. You truly are helping us hack HR. So how did you gain the clarity? Like you said, you shifted into HR. What was that transformation? You were in engineering, you decided to go into HR. How did you gain the clarity of, like you said, looking back, realizing what you could bring to HR?
Well, to me, coincidentally, because of all the things that are happening right now, we are in the middle of this crisis of the coronavirus. To me, it happened during a crisis, actually. I see myself as a very creative person. When I define myself as a misfit, meaning that for me, it's very difficult to just, be, to abide by the rules that have been set by some superpower. And so I was working in this place. It's a small company that I gave myself into it. I put all my energy and my love into that company, and they fired me because I was at the end of my career in that company. I had started creating another company to do social projects and whatnot, right? And when they found out about that, they got really mad at me and they fired me for that. No reason. That was the only reason for them was you cannot do two things at the same time, so we're firing you. So I went back to HR and I said, how is this even possible? And they said, well, we can't do anything about it, blah, blah, blah. And I said to me, I can't believe that HR is like this. Why are they not doing the right thing right now? I mean, I have delivered so much value to this company and they are doing something wrong. So that was an epiphany for me, because I said, I started researching about HR and I said, if this is the way HR is and this is the way they are treating me, and I'm delivering value in this company, imagine how it would be for other people who maybe they are less visible in the company, or maybe they are less sort of extroverted, like I am very extroverted and outspoken. So how would they treat them if they treat me this way? So I said, you know what, I want to get into HR and I want to see if I can do things differently, right? So I started my career in HR, and then the epiphany to create Hacking HR came at a time when I started combining HR with my background in electronic engineering. I started doing research about the future of work, the impact of technology in HR. And I realized that in HR, we are lacking the tools to understand all that's going on right now. And by the way, all of this is pre-coronavirus. So this is all my thinking pre-coronavirus. So I found out that in HR, we lacked the knowledge, the tools, the capabilities to really help ourselves and help our companies thrive in a reality of work that is very different from anything that we had experienced before. And I said to myself, is it possible? The assumption to me was, would HR people be interested in having conversations with technologists around the impact of technology in HR? Is that something that people would be interested in? And I found out that the answer was yes. People were interested in that. So that's how Hacking HR started, being a place to talk about technology and HR and future of work. Then it evolved and became not just events to talk about those things, but now it is a community where we bring people together to collaborate, to share, to work with each other and whatnot. So that's a series of epiphanies that I've had over the past at least 10, 15 years.
You turned that obstacle into an opportunity, right? The obstacle of just that narrow thinking, that siloed thinking of, no, you can't do two things at one time, which it stifles innovation, it stifles talent. So I think that was amazing that you then took it upon yourself to say, no, this is wrong, and I'm going to go help make this change. You mentioned the coronavirus, and a lot of times opportunity comes out of crisis. What do you think the transformation our current HR people or professionals, executives, myself included, need to experience in terms of a transformation? What is the transformation an HR individual needs to experience to be prepared now for the new normal?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to begin by saying this. This is not a new thing, by the way. For many, many years, a lot of people have been talking about putting humans first when it comes to the workplace, right? There are people who have been talking about purpose at work for 50 years, for 60 years. If you remember Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the concentration camps, and then he started talking about finding meaning. And then you had people like Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talking about flow and finding meaning at work. So these people have been doing that work for 50 plus years. And then you think about how the workplace has behaved for such a long period of time. They always put profit ahead of people, of people. Because in their minds, business sustainability was always tantamount to how much money we're making to make it sustainable, and not how much meaning people find in the work that they're doing, how happy they are, how much joy they find in the work that they're doing. So this is what's happening today. We are in a time of crisis where many organizations will have to make very tough decisions. Thousands of people will be laid off. Thousands of companies, especially small to medium-sized companies, will shut down because, that's what's happening during this crisis of the coronavirus. But the thing that I'm seeing right now is this fast awakening in HR people, but also business leaders, in saying we're going to try to do as much as we can to either not lay people off or to lay the least amount of people off in our jobs. And to do that, what they're doing is they are, taking pay cuts. Some CEOs are totally giving up their salaries for the year, to make sure that somehow their companies continue to survive during this crisis. So this idea that for so many years was just like a dream, like a hippie dream of putting people first. Now we are seeing it in reality playing out, a very important role during this crisis. It's like, how can we avoid as much as possible to lay our people off, to fire people, to shut down our company, because we are providing to all these families right now. Let me give you another example of that, which is healthcare, particularly here in the United States. Last week, there were 3.3 million people who filed for unemployment benefits. If they had healthcare provided by their employers, most of them, or all of them, lost that healthcare. Right. So now we are in a conversation of why is it that healthcare has to be tied to employment, right? So but this is not new. People have been talking about this for many, many years. So what I'm envisioning is, and if we learn out of this experience, because this is the critical point, if we learn out of this crisis that we're going through right now, whenever this is over, and I'm hoping that it's sooner rather than later, but whenever this is open, we're going to have to sit down and say, you know what, we suffer a lot because, first of all, we didn't offer healthcare to our people. Second, we didn't have a safety net to the most vulnerable people in our countries. Third, we didn't have any protections in place for our small to medium-sized companies. Our solopreneurs, gig workers were just left by themselves suffering while we were just giving all these bailouts to massive corporations. So we are going to come to the place where we have to really redefine what we want work to be in the future. Because this is the thing, Monica. This pandemic, whenever we are over it, we're going to have another one. It is going to be in a year from now. It is going to be in 5 years from now. It doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's going to be eating, alive bats in Wuhan, China, and it could be whatever. It doesn't have to be a virus. It can be the effect of technology, the effect of climate change. But we are going to be dealing with major accelerations that will create several pain points in humanity. So now, to me, this new world of work, we really, really, really have to put people first in the center of all the things that we do. And if we are not able to do that, we are just doomed to not only making the same mistakes, but to suffering the same way we're suffering right now. And I have been saying all throughout this crisis that I am hoping that whenever we see the light of another day, whenever we go over this crisis, I hope that we are not making the same mistakes that we made before. I am hoping that at the end of this crisis, we're not in the same place where we started, because then we didn't learn out of all the pain that we're going through at the moment. So that's my vision and my hope for the future.
That is exceptionally insightful, and completely agree with you that it has turned HR on its head. And I think there's a lot of HR executives and CHROs who are finding themselves in a situation where they almost maybe never prepared for this. I mean, sure, you're always preparing for, you always have your contingency plans and things like this, but it happens in waves, or they're like, oh, well, we'll send part of the workforce, to work from home, and, we'll balance it out. But it was something that now is kind of forced upon them. And I totally agree with you on that. Unfortunately, and I'm again generalizing as you are, a lot of HR leaders or HR business professionals or line professionals, they are influenced by the business. And so rather than, like you said, putting people first, and the HR person really, kind of going to bat for the people and for the human capital per se, and the talent, you have the business really influencing them or their decisions as to, what is best for the business. How is it going to impact the bottom line? And, I could go on and get on my soapbox of, just being a diversity professional for the past 20 years of telling them, you have no idea how much the diversity of thought and diversity and inclusion increase the bottom line if you would just, be a little bit more open and embrace that.
Yeah.
So I think that's fantastic.
I do want to add one thing to what you're saying, Monica, which is really interesting. I think it is very, very difficult for anybody to be prepared for something like this. This is unprecedented, right? I mean, yes, we had a pandemic in 2009, and then we had another pandemic in 2014 with Ebola, and then there was, the Spanish flu in 1918. But to be in the middle of something like this at a global scale, I don't think any of us, has been here ever before at this scale. But so I know that there are things that are new, right? Like, how do we send 90% of our global workforce to work from home? That may be a new thing, right? But what is not new is some of the concepts that we are sort of seeing emerge right now. Like, for example, how much you have to trust your people to let them work from home. If you think about it, 4 weeks ago, you probably would have asked some leaders, and they would have told you, I don't want my people to work from home because I don't trust them. And they wouldn't have said it this way. They would have said, like, I can only measure productivity when they are in the office. Right. Or like, oh, you have kids, mom or dad? No, I don't think you're going to be paying attention to work. You're going to be playing with your kids at home. Now, so the concept of building trust and letting people telework is not a new thing. This has been around for such a long time, but it's because of this crisis that the optimization and the maximization of trust is emerging, because you don't have any option, right? If you want your company to survive, you must trust that your people will do the right thing when they are working from home. So yes, I do understand that there are things that are new, but there was somebody who said before, things have to be said several times because people don't listen. Right. So this thing of remote work, I have my friend Paul S, from he used to work in Microsoft. Now he's working for staffing.com. And, he's been working on this concept for so many years. And people were like, it's a beautiful concept. We don't know. But now it is like, okay, that's a new thing, remote work. But it's not new. It has been around for a while. It's only that people didn't trust their employees to let this happen. So yeah, it's going to be a learning experience for everybody to know that sometimes we may be unprepared for some things in a crisis, but some other times it is important to sort of embrace the ideas some thinkers are, giving us, right? And I always say a couple of things that to me are, this is very interesting that I said this like about 2 months ago in a video. I mentioned this, and I think it's more relevant today than ever before. I said that the business leaders, the successful business leaders of the future, we have to do two things that are very difficult. One of them is to see the invisible, and the other one is to believe the unbelievable. So let me explain what that means in this tragedy. In December, somebody said there's something going on with a virus in Wuhan, China. Somebody said that this was back in December. Some leaders did not believe that this was true. And that includes business leaders and political leaders because they didn't believe it was true and because they couldn't see it. If they had believed that this was true and they had seen what was seemingly invisible to them, we wouldn't be in this place in which we are today. Same thing happens when some of these thinkers come to a company and say remote work, gig workforce is a very important thing and you have to take it into account. For these companies, for these business leaders, it is like, oh, I don't see it, I don't believe it, therefore it won't happen.
No, absolutely.
So it is. That's not how it works. That logic is illogic, right? And that's not how it works. That's not how it works. So what I'm hoping is that because of this crisis, business leaders learn to see the invisible, which they don't have to see by themselves. They can bring their teams to help them see things that they cannot see by themselves, and to believe the unbelievable. And that means that sometimes you're going to have to believe things that contradict your own assumptions, because it is in those things where the next innovation or the next solution for the next crisis or the next the preparation for the next crisis are lying.
100% true. Now I think there's going to be so much more opportunity for so many more people because now companies realize that work can still be done, productivity still happens, and in some cases it increases because their people are more happy. But the caveat, or I would say the catch-22 on that is that we need to make sure that we are sharing and teaching effective strategies for people to be able to focus on the right thing at the right time for work. And so I would ask you, what are some of the things or strategies or maybe habits or hacks that we would share with individuals of how do you manage now work and life, especially if you're working from home?
Well, it's I'm biased in that sense because I've worked from I love working from home and to me it is I find a lot of joy and happiness in working from home, even though it feels lonely sometimes. But I have so many calls every day that I'm always like, okay, I need a rest of talking to people. The one thing that I would suggest to everybody working from home right now is social distancing does not mean social isolation. And this is a very critical thing to understand. While you have to be away from people, from touching them, from hugging them, from kissing them, from seeing them, from hanging out with them, we have technology right now. You and I are connected on Zoom. There's many other technologies out there that people can use, or just a simple phone call, right? To your family, your significant others, and your coworkers, whatever it is. Don't lose the human touch. And right now that human touch, it is a human online touch, right? It is we can only do it through online platforms. But to me, the first thing is do not think that social distancing, physical social distancing, means that you have to be isolated from the world. You can still connect to people, and I encourage everybody to connect with people because this can feel really lonely. Like for example, I myself, I am an outdoorsy person. I spend a lot of time in the wilderness, running in the mountains, and it's hard for me, even though I'm used to this working from home. It is hard for me not to be able to be out there. So I imagine people who are just like by themselves and they are used to just going to work, and because that was their social outlet. So be in contact, in touch, in online touch with other people. So don't lose touch of that human touch. Then the other thing is that you have to be compassionate to yourself or with yourself, and what that means is that and I've been saying this ever since this coronavirus exploded over at least here in the United States the past 3 or 4 weeks. I have been saying that we can't transfer the way we worked and the way we lived in the in-person world to the online world. We can't just do a transfer. Right? It doesn't work that way. And it doesn't work that way because then, like when you work from home, then you have your family around, your kids, your pets, the fridge is there. You want to go and get something all the time. And, there are many distractions, and you have to reassess the way you do your work, the way you relate to others when you are in the online world. And when I say you have to be compassionate with yourself, that means that, especially in times of crisis, things won't necessarily, go the way you want them to go. So you have to be patient. You have to focus on the essentials, on what really matters, on what's important. You have to try to take all the noise and the waste away outside of, away from you, because there's going to be many distractions that, that do not really, they're not really worth your time, so you're going to have to be more mindful about what you put your attention into, right? It's going to have to be your family. It's going to have to be your friends, your work. And so to me, it is being in touch with other humans and making sure that you are very, very loving to others and to yourself as well, because this is hard for everybody. We're all in this together. I was interviewing somebody yesterday, and he said something. He said, this is the first time in history. This is the first time in the history of humanity that we are all going through the very, very same pain. Like even in the world wars before, many nations were involved in wars, but not all. So it is now when we are seeing something that really impacts the lives of everybody in the planet, regardless of, whatever thing that, brings us apart. This virus doesn't really care about that. It doesn't care if you are a Republican or a Democrat, if you are straight or gay, if you're black or white, if you are, Latino or, or North American. It doesn't matter. The virus is not discriminating against anybody. So it is the first time that we're all going through this pain. So we have to be very, very loving and empathetic and tolerant and understanding and caring with others, but very much with ourselves as well.
I totally agree with that. And I think the beauty of that is people are going to see is now maybe some of our male peers who never really understood what it was like to balance work and life, or balance children, or balance the household. They're probably going to appreciate now the talent and the focus and the just the organization that it takes to be able to manage your children, manage other kind of competing priorities with work at the same time. So I think maybe you will start seeing some individuals who are going to appreciate the energy, the effort, and the work that it takes to have a full-time job and manage a household, or be able to work from home and be successful. And because I think a lot of them, I have a lot of peers and male peers who are reaching out and are like, oh my God, I've never realized how much, my wife was having to do when she was working from home or coming home and taking care of things. Now it's like they're being forced to see it and experience it. So they take it away with them.
I posted something on my LinkedIn, I think it was a few days ago. And I said, if I hear anybody ever again saying that they will not give women the opportunities for promotion or leadership positions because they have to take care of family, and that means in their minds that they wouldn't be able to take care of work, I'm going to smack them in the head. That's what I said. Because it's been proven already. This is not a new thing that you can deal with all these things, and nobody's expecting any woman to be a superwoman, right? But the reality is that you are taking care of family, of the household, and of work. Should you have? Is it fair that you have all this burning just on you? No, it's not fair. But that's historically what's happened. And historically, what's happened from the workplace is that, especially male leaders, but I've also found some female leaders thinking the same thing.
Yes.
Some leaders thinking like, oh, you know what, Monica, you have to take care of your baby. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, maybe we're gonna pass you for a promotion now until you are back at work. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? You can do all these things at the same time because you have been doing them before. So my hope is that this really changes the way we think about the opportunities that we're providing to those that are leading in work, in home, and with taking care of family, which sometimes most of the times it is women, sometimes it is men as well, right? That are going through this sort of pain of not finding opportunities, because it's less in males, but it also happens, right? So anyhow, I just want to make that comment, because I think this is a very important experience for us to finally, ditch those stupid, mistaken assumptions that we have made about people that are, the leaders of their in their households, the heads of their households.
Yes. So switching gears a little bit, one of the things that I've been extremely impressed about you is your ability to build such a huge community within the HR community. You've been able to build this community virtually. And, how do you do that, especially now that there is going to be this shift, right? Like you said, people working from home have to learn how to foster long-lasting relationships and powerful relationships virtually. How did you gain access and proximity to influential leaders, and how do you maintain them from afar?
That's an interesting question. I think it is, to me, the most important thing that we have done with this community, or the most important underlying principle of our community, is that we are very authentic with what we want. And I think that's what's made the difference in the work that we've done and in the impact that we have. Since the very beginning, the motto of Hacking HR was very simple: to create the best HR that has ever existed. You go back to September of 2017 when we put together the first event, and you go back to the video that I posted, a week ago about something related to Hacking HR, and it's been always the same. We want to create the best HR that has ever existed, but not for the sake of HR, but for the sake of creating a better workplace, because I think that once we create a better HR, we're going to have a better workplace. And if we have a better workplace, we have better societies as well.
Right.
So I think that the way people see the work that we're doing in Hacking HR is very authentic. And we started, our offering, 99.9% of all our offering is free. So people not only see that this is authentic, they see like, well, these guys are putting all, like, the conference that we had 3 weeks ago, that conference took 50, 60 hours of work of me a week. And I was doing all that for free.
Right.
Yes, we got 7 or 8 sponsors, but that was not that much money. It was enough for us to pay some expenses and, to have a little bit of leverage in revenue to, for future investments. But, there are other events that are extremely expensive. They get all this money from the sponsors, and I don't think they have the same impact that we have or that we had with our event. So for people, the way people saw it is, these guys are authentic in the work that they are doing and what they want out of it. And they are not trying to rip anybody off by when they are doing that work. And when people see that, they see that as something genuine, and that we really want to make a difference. To me, when people ask me, what is your end goal, is to make a difference, right? I don't want to be rich. I mean, I want to be enough to just live, without having, the pain of, thinking, what am I going to eat tomorrow? But to me, the what guides me is I want to leave a legacy. I want to have an impact in HR. And if I can say, that we have transformed the HR function through the work that we're doing in Hacking HR, that to me is the most important thing. So I think that that's why people are very attracted to what we're doing, because of that authenticity, because of how genuine we are in the work that we do, and because of the fact that everybody who's coming to this community comes with the same principles, by the way. They are vendors, they are consultants, they are practitioners, but when they come here, they come selflessly and unconditionally to give to others and share with others and collaborate with others. They don't come to sell. They don't come to, they come here to build and improve and make this community better, to create the best HR that has ever existed. So I think that's what determines or that what makes a difference in the work that we've done versus other HR groups, perhaps.
No, absolutely. So it's the authenticity that you bring with every interaction that you're having with individuals, that they see that and it creates that trust that you need in that relationship. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
So wrapping up, I would love for just given if you could look in a crystal ball and giving, your background in terms of innovation and thinking about the coronavirus and how the world of work has kind of been flipped on its head, how would you define the new normal in a month from now, 2 months from now? What do you think we're going to land at in terms of what is going to be the new normal for the workplace?
Well, I think in 1 or 2 months from now would be too early to think about a new normal. I think we are going to go, and I don't want to sugarcoat this. I think we're going to go through a lot of pain in the next weeks and months to come. We're going to see, thousands of companies shutting down and thousands of local economies, collapsing. I think when we are like over the main sort of peak of this crisis, we're going to get to a new normality where, working from home will be okay, where, we're going to leverage more on technology to do the work that we do in a more effective and efficient way. I'm thinking that, I'm hoping that, HR will rise as a function that led through times of crisis with empathy and love. And because, it's going to be very hard. And, HR will have to make, with their business leaders, will have to make the tough decisions sometimes to lay people off, because it's the only way for that one company to continue operating, especially if they are small to medium-sized companies. But HR will do so, I'm hoping, with, beginning with empathy, right? And so I think that new normality will be leveraging on technology, being open-minded to innovation and agility in the workplace, letting people work from home, leveraging on trust to know that people will do their best even if they are at home, that the fact that they are at home while working and taking care of family does not prevent them from being great employees and great contributors or great leaders in their companies. And like I said at the very beginning of our conversation, I'm hoping that we come to a place where we finally sit down and say, these differences, these things that have separated us for such a long time. You are a Republican, I'm a Democrat, you support you're Trump, and I don't support Trump. I am hoping that eventually we come to a place where we say, we will continue to have differences in some things, but there are many other things that we're going to have to agree, like healthcare, for example, or like the safety net for the most vulnerable people, or how to take care of small to medium-sized companies, which is the fabric of employment and agility and innovation in this country, how we're going to take care of them in times of crisis. Taxes is another thing that I think we're going to have to, in the new normality, we're going to come across to this idea of whether, decreasing taxes for those who have the most amount of money makes sense, especially when we are in good times, because what happens when we are in the bad times, then we don't have any savings. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think that new normality will come, and I'm hoping that we all get together to discuss about that. I think what's going to happen in the next 1 to 2 months is that, because we were thrown into this very fast readjustment period. In 2 weeks we were told you cannot come to work, you cannot go to the restaurant, you cannot leave your home, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, and that has all happened, at least here in the United States, in the past 2 or 3 weeks. We were totally thrown off tracks. We were caught off guard, and for us this is all very new. But if this crisis continues, and I'm hoping it doesn't, but if this coronavirus thing continues, there, in a month or 2 months from now, I am hoping that we're in a place where we say, this thing, working remotely or talking to people online, which 1 month ago was totally new for me, now it's normal. Me going to the store, and like using gloves or like washing my hands every day, after I touch everything, that was new for me 1 month ago. Now it becomes my new normality. So some of the things that are happening right now, we're going to embrace them as new normality, even if we ditch them a little later when we are out of this main crisis. But work-wise, I'm hoping that we come together and redefine what work looks like for the future. And we become way more human. That's the most important thing of all, that we really, really become way more human than we have ever been before.
That is beautiful. And one last question for our listeners. Yeah. What would be the one piece of advice or the key for them to be successful during this, in this environment?
I think we're going to have to embrace 2 things. We're going to have to embrace the fact that this is hard. There's going to be a lot of suffering. I'm not saying that we have to grow a thicker skin and become, oblivious to the suffering of others. but I think we will see more suffering, and it's going to be hard. So we have to prepare mentally, physically, emotionally to see all that's going to happen, because it's going to be really hard what's coming. No matter what some leaders think they want to happen or what they say will happen, it will be very hard in the few weeks to come. So I think we have to embrace the fact that we have to prepare, emotionally, physically, mentally for what's coming. And then the second thing is that I am hoping that this, teaches us in some way to become more comfortable with the uncomfortable, to become more comfortable with uncertainty and chaos. Because the new reality of work, at least for the past, maybe 15, 20 years, has been chaos, right? I mean, it's interesting that the president of one country says one thing and the stock market goes down or goes up, right? So that's how volatile our world is today, and so we have to become more not only acquainted but comfortable with the fact that the new reality of life and work is very chaotic, it's very volatile and very uncertain. And if we find a way to continue to thrive and be okay in spite of all those circumstances, I think we're going to be in a good place whenever we're all over this crisis and into the future, whenever we deal with some other crisis. The thing with humans is that we are not good at managing crisis. We like comfort. We like normality. We like same thing day in and day out. Even when people say that they don't like routine, we like routine. Like just think about when you drive to work, or when even when you shower yourself. You soap your face first, and that's what you do every time, because we like routine. We don't like breaking that apart. But now we are in a time that will extend itself into the future, as in it's chaos, it's uncertain, and we're going to have to learn, to be comfortable with the fact that maybe some days we're going to have to drive to work in a different route, and that's going to be fine, right? And we're going to survive that. And if we learn how to embrace that uncertainty, that chaos, that difficulties that we're going to be dealing with, I think we're going to be, better prepared to deal with future crises and also to embrace future opportunities.
Very insightful. And with that, I want to thank you so much, Enrique, for taking this time to share your insights and with our audience here at the Beyond Barriers podcast. And we look forward to having you on in the future.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. There are thousands of podcasts out there, and we are so grateful that you've chosen to listen to ours. Visit IamBeyondBarriers.com, where you'll find show notes and links to all the resources referenced in this episode. And be sure to take the quiz on the website. Your score will tell you where you are, what helps you gain momentum, and what holds you back. You'll also get a free guide with cutting-edge career strategies. We'd also love to hear from you. Share your comments and topic suggestions on IamBeyondBarriers.com. And we'll be sure to address them in future episodes. If you enjoyed our show today, please subscribe and rate the podcast, or just tell a friend about it. See you next episode.